Like to hear? Here we go.
Let's get it.
Scotch, bourbon, and rye, yeah, we on that whiskey. Wanna discuss an array of topics, conversation simply. Gonna drop your whiskey bars with the sip hitting for. Could you pass it? You want more? Another glass, let it flow. Steady pour. Steady pour. Yeah, a steady pour. A steady pour of growing, a steady pour of sharing, a steady pour of knowing. Now pass that Glencairn. So pull up a chair, grab a glass, and enjoy a melanin-infused perspective with a whiskey twist. Yeah, yeah, a steady pour.
Where we at, Cal? Where we at, Tone? Where we at, Darius?
Yes, sir.
We at a steady pour. Welcome to a steady pour podcast.
Yes, sir.
I'm your pour coach, Drew.
Cow.
Tony, what's up?
Darius, what it do?
And we are your co-host for another episode of a steady pour.
You know what I love? Whenever we have a guest and they're listening to, I'm assuming you're listening to our theme music for the first time.
I won't lie, you boys got me about running through a brick wall. You got me hyped up with that.
Let's go.
Right. That's the goal. That is the goal. And I always look at the video of somebody listening to it for the first time, and they're like, "Oh,
Well, I'm
they're gonna
watching
start
you guys, and I look up and look at myself, and I'm like, I'm sitting alone in my kitchen.
bopping."
That's what we want.
It's a vibe, man. It's a whole vibe. It is.
So if y'all haven't ever figured out, we have a special guest with us.
Yes, sir.
Indeed.
And from our previous episode, we kind of gave you a clue where we were going with it. We were enjoying some nice pours.
Yes, we were.
Yeah,
indeed.
that farm feel.
Yeah, perhaps from Indiana.
Bring the family
Indiana,
down.
You know, a little
Right.
outside Kentucky, you know.
So you might have seen him in the Indiana farmhouse over there at the Hubert Farms and Starlight Distillery with your favorite barrel pig group, or maybe you were actually enjoying a family trip out there in the farm. Maybe there was an event happening. Maybe you were tasting some wine and whatnot, and
Some
then
brandy.
Fresh donuts.
Yeah.
you was having a
having
good
a
old
great
time.
old time,
And then
kid.
you stumbled across a rick house.
Or two.
Stumbled in and out of.
Where it never ends.
Or walked in and stumbled out of.
We definitely stumbled out of that Rick house.
It's like Disney World for your whiskey enthusiast. You walk in there, and so we have Starlight's own
Yes, sir.
Andrew Jerdonek,
Yes.
Yes,
the
sir.
Spirits Program Director over at Starlight Distillery. What's up, Andrew? How you doing?
How we doing?
Welcome
I'm
to
doing
the
very
show.
well, guys. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, sir.
Shout out.
First of all, great name. Great, solid first name.
Right.
Thank you.
Another Andrew here.
Oh, of
I was like, where's he
Of course.
going with this? Like,
Right.
you really mean it? I forgot. Oh, yeah. He's
Another
Andrew
Andrew.
as well.
Yes.
Strong name. I get it.
From one Andrew to another Andrew.
Solid.
Can't go wrong with that.
Oh man, but we're glad to have you because we were, like I said before, we was enjoying some of the Family Reserve.
Yes, sir.
We was like, yeah, we need to finally reach out and talk to Andrew over at Starlight.
Yes.
And sort of see what's behind the juice, what you guys have planned, what makes Starlight,
Yeah.
and what you guys have planned for the future. So we're excited to get into it.
Yes.
Absolutely excited to dive in, man.
Nice.
Thank you.
Well, Darius, did you get your rye pour already? I know you already.
You already know that ride. Oh, that ride was heavenly. That's an understatement. That's the ride of the year right there for me. Oh my
Ooh,
gosh,
love that.
it was really good. I'm trying to get a bottle of that. So you mean you hook these brothers
Might
up?
have to get that
Oh, man, I might got a couple floating around.
Oh,
Hey.
say less. Say less. I'll pay for it. I don't care.
It's that good.
It's that good, man.
Yeah.
It's that
Sir.
good.
So Andrew, if you could, share with the audience, sort of, and us, how did you end up, sort of at Starlight, and what made you say, well, first of all, like I wanted to be a part of the whiskey industry?
Yeah, well, it's funny, kind of like how you all mentioned. It's like showing up to the farm. You meant to go do a wine tasting. You meant to take a left. You ended up taking a right, and you ended up in the rick house. It's just kind of the way that it was. So, a little bit of background. So, I'm born and raised down here in Southern Indiana. So,
Nice.
I was raised in a neighboring town of Floyd's Knobs, right next to Starlight. And I currently live in Greenville, which is on the other side of Starlight. You can tell I didn't make it very far out of that area right there. But once I turned 18, I moved up to Indianapolis. Ended up going to college, starting off. Believe it or not, I was a nursing major to get that cut off. Yeah,
Okay.
Don't be too impressed.
That's just a left turn. I didn't expect that.
Yeah. Well, it was one of those things. I think I made it far enough in nursing school to almost put a Band-Aid on somebody. So I didn't make it very far. I think that I really just committed when I was like 17 going on 18. And I was like, you know what? I'm tired of my parents asking me. I'll do nursing. That seems easy enough. Well, I was wrong. And so I really got a chance to think about really what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go, what I saw myself, and really what my strengths are. And I never claimed to be the smartest man in the world, but I'm good at talking. I'm good at being with people. I'm good at being interpersonal. And one thing that always kind of stuck out to me was hospitality, not necessarily in any way, shape, or form. It wasn't really in by design. It's not like I had like some type of plan in mind, but I ended up going and I got a degree, and this is a mouthful, but in tourism, convention, and event management with a focus in hospitality and a minor in business. To kind of focus a little bit more. And at the time, I got to see what I liked about the hospitality industry and what I did not. So I started off first big boy job that I had in college was I was running valets for a JW Marriott in downtown. So really that was just enough to have beer money and enough to run off the beer that I drank. It was a good college gig to have. You're already staying up late anyways as a college kid. So it was fine working nights and stuff. And Indianapolis is a beautiful and wonderful city. So did that for a while. Then I ended up getting on with an events venue. I actually managed 2 events venues in downtown Indianapolis. If you're familiar with the Indianapolis area, the Scottish Rite Cathedral, which is a really big historic cathedral, massive. And then also now it's the Salesforce Tower, I believe. But when I worked there, it used to be the Chase Tower at the very, very top. So managed that up there. Quickly realized after a couple of years of doing that in college that just, it really wasn't for me. Weddings aren't my thing. It's just, I don't even know how the hell I got into that. I think it was something I ended up being like a busser, and they were like, this kid kind of knows what he's doing. So let's put him up a little further. So they, took the leash off a little bit on that one. And by that time, my fiance at the time moved up, Ashley, she did a year with me up there. She's a homebody. She wanted to move back, so we ended up moving back home. And the difference between Southern Indiana and Indianapolis is very, very vast. Even when you look at Kentucky, Kentucky's a convention town, not necessarily like an events town. Now it is more so, but back in the day, it really wasn't. You worked at the Kentucky Convention Center, or you did weddings, and I wasn't doing that again. And so what I did was I just kind of looked around, and I ended up getting a job at a logistics company for trucking. And one of the biggest things that I tell younger kids that are coming in is it's not necessarily finding what you like to do. Sometimes it's easier to find what you don't like to do. And that was the longest 5-6 months of my life. It just wasn't for me. It just wasn't for me. It didn't vibe well with the company, and I just didn't like the atmosphere. So one day I woke up, I had enough, and I left. That was the end of it. So now fast forward, we're at, now that we have that weird background of my life, now I'm, it's, 2018, I guess it would have been somewhere around there. I'm sitting on the couch, probably having a pour or 2 of whiskey, unemployed. And I'm thinking, I have to do something here. So I remembered, part-time work at the farm was something everybody always did growing up. So let me throw in an application and just be a part-time stock boy. You know what I mean? Let's get some money so my wife doesn't leave me. I'm married up, out of my league. I can't do it twice. Don't leave me. So I ended up just putting in an application to be a part-time stock boy. And it's funny, I tell the story to Ted, my boss, and Dana, his wife. I walked in there. I was 21. I believe dressed for the position that you want. I'm in a full-blown suit and tie, and they don't tell me it's a group interview, and I'm interviewing with 2 14-year-olds that dropped off by their parents at a high school. And that was the biggest slice of humble pie I think I've ever eaten in my life, because they didn't even interview me. They were like, "Are you 21?" I was like, "Yeah." And they were like, "Get in the lobby." I'm like, "Okay." I was like, "Great." So I ended up getting the job, and the real thing that I focused on was not, just drinking bourbon, because everybody has the joke, like, "Oh, you must love your job because what you do is drink." And you're like, well, the reason why I got to this point is it's so much more depth than that. It's what kind of seed did you put in the ground, and how much time did you take to grow that grain? And once you grew that grain, what did you do once you harvested it? And then once you harvested it and it went from the agro side to the distillation side, what did you do in order to turn that from a usable grain to a powder that then got cooked, that then got fermented, that then got distilled, then got barreled, and then aged for 4 years? And this is it was all encompassing. It was almost obsessive, if you want to look at it like that. I had to know the answer, and if I didn't have the answer, I would lie about it. And then once I had it, I'd go find the answer. And so that led me from being a part-time stock boy to a full-time stock boy to the tour guide at the farm, from the tour guide to a shift lead, from a shift lead to a manager, from a manager to the single barrel coordinator, and then finally to the spirits program director, where I oversee the entire spirits operation. And it's just because of hard work and asking questions. It's if you have the thirst for knowledge, it goes great. And the thing I love about it is the company that I work for, and not even the company that I work for, the family that I work for, they're farmers. They love people that are educated, and they love people that do this, but nothing will make a farmer value your time more than hard work and hard work ethic. So it's been a wild ride. It's been about 6 years now. I always make a joke. I've been employed with them for 6 years, but I've been causing trouble for them for about 15 because I'm born and raised around there. But it's been a great time. It's been a great experience. And we've grown, this from originally in 2017, before I started, they were able to sell about 30 single barrels in a year. And in the past, I would say since 2022, I think I'm around 3,000. So nice. We're moving. Moving. It's been a hell of a ride. We love it.
That's awesome.
I've never met someone in the spirits industry that has such a similar background in mine, because my degree is in hotel and hospitality management with a minor in cruise line management.
Let's go. So you share my pain.
Yes.
You understand.
Yes, I do.
You understand.
15 years of my adult life was in hotel management.
Can't make anybody happy ever.
Ever.
That's it.
Hospitality.
What I thought was, there's a number of cool things about that story, but one thing that stuck out to me was when you started to say, "Oh, I've been with this company," but then you were like, "family." I would say, like, during that, during your journey, at what point did it go from company to family to you? Like,
it's been, and that's the funnest thing about this, is that it's been family from the jump, from the beginning. Nice. And the reason why I say that is because, another little context is that we went to a high school called Our Lady of Perpetual Help. So it's a little private Catholic school down in Clarksville, about 20 minutes away from here. I'm the oldest. 2 years under me is Christian Huber in the 7th generation. 2 years under Christian is Blake Huber in the 7th generation. 1 year under him is Ryan, their cousin, in the 7th generation. Wow. 1 year above me is our compliance coordinator, Jerome Finn, who went to school with us. So the thing is that it's always been family. In that same school that we went to, Ted Huber, the 6th generation, also went to back in the day. Wow. So the thing is that it's always really actually funny, and it's also ironic that we all went off into the world and did our own things. We got different education styles, different backgrounds, and somehow we all ended up coming back to the same area to build something great. So it's always been about family. Now I wasn't getting yelled at like Ted as much as I do now, depending on what I do. But it's always been family. So it's been phenomenal.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. Would you say that's one of the things that sets apart Starlight from some of the other? I mean, I know there's other whiskey distilleries, but also, I guess, craft distilleries as well. Yeah.
Well, the thing is that what I've really noticed is that, there are a lot of distilleries that are or claim to be farm to glass, and there are a lot of distilleries that are or claim to be family owned. There are very, very few that I have ever seen that I can safely say is farm to glass and family owned. And I was explaining to a group earlier today. I was taking them. I had a double barrel pick today, and I think it was the second barrel pick. We were walking back on the bottling line, and for some reason, Ted's back there putting caps on bottles because they were short because the bottling line for the wine broke down. They are not idle owners. They're not sitting back and just just raking in the money and just sitting and just hoping everything goes well. I mean, they're there 7 days a week. They would not ask you to do something they have not done, 10,000 times over.
Right.
And it's one of those things that, somebody asked me a few falls ago. I was in the middle of a barrel pick. I'm not joking. I had to stop the barrel pick, because we were getting hammered so bad up in retail, I had to go back and flip burgers on the grill because they were short on the grill. And then, of course, the bathroom clogs, and I have to go get a drain snake and drain the bathroom before going back to a barrel pick. And somebody said, "Why the hell are you doing that?" And I said, "Because I saw Ted doing it the week before."
There you go.
And it's one of those things that you don't ever want to see your boss doing something that you are not going to do. So the thing is, if you see him doing it, you bet your ass you better be doing it next time. So it's one of those things that, he does anything that the owners, would do, they wouldn't ask you to do if they weren't going to do it themselves. So they're a different breed.
Wow.
Yeah. Cool. I must say that the first time coming onto a Starlight, I was going to call it a campus, but the farm, it was sort of like, I think, right, that was the first time. Yeah, the first time was like, it was, everybody was there in terms of, it was family oriented. The family feel was what, I think there was a kid field trip happening at the same time when we were there.
Right.
I guarantee it.
And it was an active farm, and the whole community was coming out there. And
it was like apple picking or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. If it was fall time, it was apple and pumpkin picking. You had the donuts fired up there. You had the
the donuts were fantastic.
Oh yeah, those things are deadly.
The farm was beautiful. Like that's on the top of my list of places that I could bring my family if I wanted to do like a Kentucky, Indiana trip, right? I'm like, we're going over to Starlight to hang out. The whole family's gonna have a good time. And
there's gonna be something for everyone.
Such a vibe.
I think what's cool in like the grain to glass aspect that you're talking about is like you can actually take a trip out and like pick the fruit that you guys use in your brandy and like in your different products. Actually see the grain that you guys use. Like I don't know of any other distillery where you can like actually like touch the products that you're gonna taste. So.
Well, and that's the thing is that it's grain to glass has gotten beaten into the dirt so bad because the thing is that everything's grain to glass. You know what I mean? In theory,
it sounds
everything
good.
is grain to glass. It sounds good, but it's one of those ones that until you walk a football field's length out of the rick house and end up in a cornfield or a rye field or a wheat field, and you can physically touch this varietal corn versus this varietal corn and understand that this varietal corn is going to go to a specific lot of whiskey, whereas this one's going to go to the general bulk mash bills. It's just different. People don't understand what true farm to glass and grain to glass means until they are physically lost in a cornfield, really.
Absolutely.
It's the way that it works.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't truly understand what we're saying as that family atmosphere until you can go from a rick house, go on a ride through the cornfields, hit up the little area to get you some donuts and some pizza.
Oh yeah, get you that farmer's market,
and then walk down. Because you're full. You're a little drunk, I wanna go check out the koi fish in the pond that you have sitting on the side of the.
I can speak to that. That's a whole vibe.
And just kind of chill. There is something for everyone at your farm, and it's pretty fantastic.
And it's funny because people always joke because we always say that there's anything that you see up there, there's a story behind it, whether it's some super, super basic, simple, or it's something that's really deep and has heritage behind it. Those koi fish, Ted's had them since he was 13.
Wow. That's amazing.
Right.
So those koi fish just keep reproducing, keep going.
That's
they're
lovely.
monster. They're hogs.
They're huge.
They're big. They're big enough that we have 2 bald eagles that live up there, and when they can't find other prey, they go and take the koi fish. Like that's how big they are. So that's one of those things that it's funny because Ted remembers getting those when he was a kid 40 years ago, and they're still there, still thriving, and honestly, they're doing better than they were probably 40 years ago.
That's crazy.
And it doesn't even seem out of place.
No.
You just walk down and you go, yeah, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, there's some monsters in the water. That's
I know.
Yeah, Darius was definitely having a good time
That
down
pond
there.
was a vibe. I know that immediately. We were all getting
Were
the
you
pizza.
the one that was taking the picture by the tree down there? You was like
Possibly, but I think I went down there to sit.
I was taking a picture of him by the tree.
Because I saw the
I was about to go
water.
down and do a wellness check. On you.
I was well.
We were like, is he okay?
That was Darius. No, that was Darius.
I was well, man. They were all sitting in a little canopy eating their pizza. I saw the pond with the koi. I'm like, I got to go down there and sit and just chill.
I got to vibe.
And vibe out.
vibing.
I'm going to find a place to vibe out anywhere I go.
And it was a
That's
beautiful
when
day,
took
too.
me in the back of his truck and was giving me rare character fours. Like,
That's right. That sounds about right. Shout out to D. Wilt, man.
Right.
That was a great time, man. The bourbon
great.
slushies. I mean, it was all hitting, man. It
We
was
definitely
all,
look forward this year.
Yes, sir.
Now, when you think about, because I kind of want to stick with the family owned and sort of get a feel of what type. I'm trying to think about like what type of decisions do you guys make where you're like, we're not that major distillery. We're not trying to keep up with them. We're trying to be us, Starlight, our family owned. What type of decisions or experiences have you had where you had to say like, no, we're doing it our way, the Starlight way? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, out the gate. I mean, just out the gate. Take us back over 10 years ago. Whenever we were first getting into grain-based distillation, so we've been a distillery since 2001. We got an artisan brandy license, and essentially they allowed us to get an 82-gallon German pot still with a rectifying column in our winery production. If you remember at the beginning of the tour, when you walk into winery production, where there's kind of like that, a joke and called it like the employee hot tub, where like that water vat is, and that small still. That is the original still that we got. And the government allowed us to essentially use fruit from our farm. Since we were an agricultural producer of it, they allowed us to pull fruit from our farm and distill it as a traditional German heritage way. Essentially, if we weren't growing the grapes that we do, the fruit that we did, they probably wouldn't let us have done it. And they let us do that for over 10 years. And then we helped rewrite legislation. And by 2013, we were able to start doing grain-based distillation. But the issue is when we were trying to figure out what we were doing, craft distilleries were, few and far between. You had it really, if you think about it, wasn't that long ago that craft distilleries really blew up. There really wasn't a ton of them on the scene. If they were there, they were under the surface. And that's when, and rest in peace, but Dave Pickerel came through, and he was a good friend of Ted and the boys. And Ted was working with him on trying to develop mash bills and, how do we want to do this versus that? And what Dave led us to say is if you source your juice and it's not your own, that is the hardest pill to get off of. Yeah. Because if you start sourcing and you hit a home run and your clientele gets hooked on this juice, and then you start stabbing at your own distillation tactic and you flop.
It doesn't live up.
Right.
It doesn't live up. What are you going to do? So out the gate, that's what we knew we had to do. And the thing is where I think a lot of distilleries miss is that they want to hit that home run out the gate. They're too afraid to fail. And so we started distilling. We were able to distill a little bit before legislation changed in 2013 because we had a deal with the U.S. government that we could, since again we were an agricultural producing farm, that the grains that were pulled from the farm we could then mill, ferment, and distill as educational purposes to figure out where we were going to be at as far as a producer of spirits. But the trade-off was we had to eradicate the spirits after we were done, barreling them, and of course we did. No, we did. We actually drank quite. Actually, I think we drank all of it. And also the thing is, it's like
Wow.
it really wasn't that good. You know what
Okay.
I mean, I've had some of the ones where, I mean, we were learning. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
people always assume they're like, oh, I need to have that pre. People love putting pre in front of anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Pre-fire, pre-prohibition, pre-flood.
You're like, no, you don't. You don't want that.
Yeah, we gotta have that pre-legislation whiskey. I'm like, no, you don't. And so in
It's
2013,
pre-quality.
yeah, it's pre. What were we doing? And so by 2013, we were able to distill our first round of Carl T, and we barreled it and we released it in 2015. It was 95 proof. It was 2 years old. It was. I mean, if you try it now, I mean, it was sharp. It's 2-year-old whiskey.
2 years,
we were
yeah.
figuring out what we were doing. It was a great benchmark. It was a good kind of, staple in the ground saying, this is where we are and this is where we're going to start growing. But it took, many years after that to really find our sweet spot of where we were. I talk to people all the time that say, Starlight, I've had it before. And I say, well, just out of curiosity, what Starlight did you have? And you're like, I was drank batch 1 and batch 2. And I'm like, see, that's your problem. Right. Yeah. So why don't you come with me, try this over here now? So the thing is that these new distilleries or even pre-existing distilleries are too afraid to fail out the gate. And that's where they start sourcing to hit that home run. And then eventually when they try to double down and they try to do their own distillation, 9 times out of 10, it's exactly where they would have been in the beginning if they would have just done it. And so that's kind of where we were at with it. And the beauty part about it is we've been a family-owned farm and business for 181 years now. Wow. When we started doing this in 2013, I'm not even going to attempt to do the math on that. We can do the subtraction on there. But the thing is that we've been a winery since 1978. We've been a farm since 1843. We had financial backing from other entities of the business. So we had wiggle room to fail. Not a lot of wiggle room, but we had wiggle room. And so that's where we were able to, start really getting that ball rolling. And then fast forward, we just celebrated 10 years of bourbon whiskey last year.
Wow.
And it is tremendous to see. If you've been a rider with Starlight from the beginning when we put it out in 2015, it has been night and day in just what we have access to now, how we distill, how we act as distillers now. Now we have our feet planted, and we're still learning every day. But the boys are really fine tuning how they distill. Ted, Christian, and Blake all have their own distillation styles. We have Connor, who is our head distiller, who is formerly from Lux Row. He's come in and helped us develop all these different mash bills. Shout out Connor, he's a bum. Tell him I said that.
Connor.
And, yeah, he's my boy. I always say he's a part-time distiller, full-time bum. The only reason why I say that is because he's not here and he's bigger than me, so he'd smack me around. But no, it's that's really what comes to mind outright is just that initial experience that we had. And, getting to walk hand in hand with Dave Pickerel and getting to be able to figure out, what it is that we wanted to do, how we wanted to do it, and if we were going to do it, how do you do it right?
Right.
Okay.
I really like that in terms of, being comfortable to fail out the gate, because I do feel that would be a major challenge.
Yeah.
A major challenge, especially, and I'm also thinking about those that source, that have aspirations to distill. They're going to have that challenge of how do you go from what you were sourcing that everyone loved, whatever that fan base was, to now you're distilling your own.
Right. I've always actually kind of wondered about that. Like if you start outsourcing, it's almost like what you were saying is kind of you kind of have to continue to source because that's your thing.
Yeah.
You're in a box.
Unless you can figure out the formula to recreate what it is that you're sourcing, it's virtually impossible to
switch it up.
Right. And unless you like continue to source and then like add your own distillate and then kind of like pivot little by little to that, then then you can kind of do that. But
and nobody wants to be the thing where it's like, all right, so we've been sourcing this brand forever, and this is our moneymaker. This is a $20 million bourbon that we put out and it's sourced. let's go ahead and start making our own juice over here. Nobody wants to be the distillery that calls their heritage brand the source juice. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
right,
also
right.
in the same grand scheme of things, nobody wants to be the distillery that has the heritage brand being the bad bourbon. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's almost like damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you go down that route and decide to pivot 180, it's a very, very tough and delicate situation, and that's where I feel like a lot of people end up making different brands. They end up putting it under different labels, because they have to make that distinction between sourced and not really.
Yeah.
Right.
How did you guys? I mean, you talked about 2015. I think you said was the original Carl T. Like when you guys put the 2-year-old juice
That was
out?
the first release. Yeah.
Is that when you guys were starting to experiment with finishing? And because I think that's kind of where we found you guys was through Harsha up at Beverage King. Maybe was that the first time we tried
Shout out
it?
Harsha.
Yeah, shout out to Harsha. And just some of the different experimental finishes he had, and we were like, these are delicious. So I was just wondering when you.
I think for me, I think my
It must have
initial
been harsher,
impression. I was gonna say my initial impression of Starlight. I remember the thought of, that's the distillery that has all those finishes.
Yeah.
I remember saying that. I was like, they had a finish for almost everything. And
Boy, don't I know. Oh man.
So yeah.
So the answer to that is no. That's not originally when we started doing the finishing. So originally how that started is when we were in this. It started by necessity, not by like, oh, let's do this finishing, because really finishing wasn't really on the scene yet in the United States.
Yeah.
It was really a Scotch thing. It was a Irish whiskey thing. It was a malt thing. It was one of those that people were doing it, but there is this really, and there still is this stigma that Starlight Distillery has really done a great job of breaking. But if you have the traditionalists, they're not gonna change their opinion, you know what I mean? But there's that stigma that if you make shit whiskey, you finish it, because the whole thing is you want to hide those flaws. You know what I mean? You want to cover up something. And Starlight's trying to change that dynamic and change that idea, because we believe if you start with an incredible base distillate, as rye or bourbon, wheat, whatever that is, and you duel that with a high-end barrel that you're bringing in from either your own operation or from a reputable source overseas, something like that, you can only go up from there. And that's where it started. But back in the day, what we were doing is we were producing rye from our farm. So we were taking rye, making a 80-20 or 90-10 mash bill rye whiskey, and out of necessity, because we didn't want to use the new American oak barrels a lot of times, is we'd use Applejack barrels. We would throw in there and use Applejack barrels, and sometimes it was intentional, sometimes it wasn't. It was kind of just dependent on what it is. We had a funky mash bill that didn't fall into the classification of the bourbon mash bills, to where legally we were bound to these rules. We were aging them in different aspects of that. And so I can remember this. There was a barrel that was released 5 years ago. It was 1147. I might still have the bottle back in there. I'll have to see if I have it, but it was in this old tall bottle, and it's actually a rye whiskey that was aging in an Applejack brandy barrel. And it's one of the most drop dead bottles I've had ever. I think it's only like a 3-year-old rye whiskey. It just was, there was something about that rye whiskey. The rye whiskey was humming so much quicker than our bourbon was. Our bourbon just took a little bit longer to kind of get feet on. But I mean, as some of you can tell sitting at that table, I'm a big rye fan, so it's come a long way from there. But that's what triggered the next one, which a lot of times people assume would be port, because we are a port producer on the farm. We produce a tawny and a ruby port from the Chamberson grape that we grow here, but actually it was Oloroso sherry. So when I came onto the scene in 2018 was about the same time that they had started doing secondary finishes with Oloroso sherry from Spain. That then rapidly triggered port wine finishes. And then from the port wine finishes, then it went to the apple brandy, legitimate apple brandy finishing, because those were all things that we did internally, except for the sherry. But the sherry, that was a big deal. It was funny because they tell a story about how, so Christian's not main job, but one of Christian's really important roles here at the farm is finding high quality barrels all across the world and getting them to the farm. And nowadays, you can expect a barrel to run $6,000 empty. If it's a high quality barrel. I think one of them might be sitting on your table right now. But back in the day, these Oloroso sherry barrels were like I don't know, maybe $700 a piece. And Christian's calling Ted, and he's like, I want to get these barrels. There's 2 of them. They're $750 a piece. And he's like, you are out of your mind.
Wow.
We're not spending $1,500 on barrels. You were out of your mind. And we ended up getting them in. And those original sherries were some of the best ones we ever did. And we knew that we were onto something. So that triggered from sherry to port, from port to apple brandy. And then that's when gasoline got dumped onto the fire. And that's where we knew that we had something special, but also B, knew that we were going to do it and were doing it better than everybody else. So
Facts.
that's when the explosion happened, and that's when we started getting all these crazy barrels. We started getting, Vino de Naranja, Spanish orange wine barrels. We started getting in Tokai barrels, Barana Brazilian oak. It took a while, and it definitely had a learning curve. We definitely have gotten bad batches of barrels in. Unfortunately, it happens. It's just one of those things. We got burned by some, I think it was cognac and Armagnac barrels, about like 30 of them, and I feel like 25 of them were duds.
Wow. That's tough.
Nothing you can do about that except turn it into like a flower pot. Not a whole lot you can do. So that's when it really exploded. So the idea of that rye finishing dueled with the new come Oloroso into the port. That's where it really kind of exploded. So that was really honed in about 2018, 2019. So about 5-6 years ago.
That's still ahead of the game, though, right? As far as like people doing finishing, it seems like you guys are kind of on the forefront of that.
Well, we were on the forefront of it, and also the thing was that back then, you could not get somebody to buy a barrel.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you could an empty barrel. Like we would be begging people to come and pick up our barrels. We would give them barrels for free. Nowadays, people will pay basically the same price as a unused barrel that they would a used barrel. It's nuts.
Right.
It's the Wild West we're living in right now. But but back then, it was outstanding what you could get at the click of a button. It was nuts. And the crazy thing is that it would be to you in like 2 weeks.
That's crazy.
Like it's just the weirdest. Now you got to order them in the wintertime because they have to cross the pond, and you want it to be cold because you don't want evaporation. And then once you get there, you have like a 4-day window to fill it up. It's just nuts how rapidly everybody has jumped on there, and how rapidly people are now figuring out that you can take outstanding distillate like we have at Starlight and then duel it with a 70-year-old cognac cask, and what you get out of it is just magic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just for clarification, when you said that you would get those used barrels and there would be duds, what exactly would make it a dud? Is it you're actually
not getting the right amount of flavor out of it, maybe?
Well, the biggest problem that you have is it being sulfured.
Okay.
So that's the biggest problem you have, is that the product on the inside of there, was either a not quality product to begin with, because people hear cognac and Armagnac and they automatically think, oh my God, 100 years old and elegant and expensive. But that's not always the case.
Right.
There's really bad cognac and Armagnac out there.
Yeah.
And especially if it comes from, which we have contracts and NDAs with the houses, so we don't even know. I mean, we could take a pretty educated guess where they're coming from. If you look on a map geographically, the odds of them coming from one of 3 places are pretty severe. But that doesn't mean anything. That really doesn't. It could have come from a house that had an underground cellar, and the parents were the distillers, and they aired it to they willed it down to the kids, and the kids said, I want to go vacation in Greece. I don't want to do this. And so they just sold off all this product. You know what I mean? It happens more time than people really think. And so we got pitched that these were, really, really supposed to be very good barrels. And I think when we got them, they just didn't meet the expectation that we thought. So some of them turned out very good. Some of them did, but there were some that after we filled them up, there's just like a lingering issue that kept coming. And what I always notice is I'm usually the one that if you can't detect the problem without there being liquid in the cask, I'm usually the first one to find it, because I'm the one tasting it with people. I'm the one going through. And if I taste a barrel with somebody and like 3 times in a row, they're like, oh, this is not it. This is not it. I'm like, all right,
That's a sign.
It might not be them. It might be actually something's wrong here. So that's whenever I go and I flag it, and the boys come out, and then the boys will do an analyzation of it. And sometimes they say, no, this is good to go. And sometimes they say there is something wrong that flew under the radar when we got them. And now that we filled them up, now there's an issue with it.
Wow.
Gotcha. Yeah. The reason why I asked is because I remember I was overseas over at the Mediterranean at a winery, and I was like, let me act like I'm someone that buys used barrels, and I was asking them like, what wood did you use, or how do you barrel it? But most of them were actually using like steel containers of some sort to make their wine.
Yeah, a lot of stainless steel vessels, and a lot of time people use that because it has a neutrality factor to it. So you are not adding nor taking anything away when you do stainless steel. And we actually use stainless steel on a percentage of our wines that are typically sweet, and sweet wines, and then dry whites typically are going to go through a cold stabilization month in a stainless steel tank, and then the other half are going to French or Hungarian oak. But no, a lot of times what happens too is that and sometimes it's not the producer's fault. Sometimes it literally is just happenstance. This is what happened on the trek over. But a lot of times barrels are damaged. And I was talking to Jess Ann, Bourbon Insider.
Oh yeah, shout out.
And she works for I always call it HA. It's not HA. It's H&A.
They sell barrels, basically, right?
They sell barrels.
Yeah.
They sell very high end barrels. And she was telling me that when they go through and grade and classify them, which I didn't know this, is that they only will change upwards of 3 staves on the barrel. If there's more than 3 staves that are damaged, they don't waste their time with it.
That's crazy.
And there are times where we have gotten barrels in and we filled it up and there's leaks coming everywhere. And the problem with that is there's a thing called a barrel swell that a lot of times distilleries will do, and that's essentially like pumping hot water into it to try to get it to expand. You can't do a barrel swell on a finishing barrel, because you're going to lose everything that barrel was. So you have to do an external swell, and an external swell is not guaranteed to do anything. Okay. So there are times where we've had Armagnac barrels that have kind of, we've had to give, and I say we like I was doing it. I wasn't doing it. I was watching them. That is not a part of my job. Although I would be glad to help, but they're like, we're not letting this boy touch this. So, basically, it's a lot of sitting and staring at wood leak for like 10 hours.
Wow.
So it's not ideal. But yeah, there's a million to one things that could go wrong and that have gone wrong and that will continue to go wrong. It's just a part of it. It's the collateral damage of being a distillery.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking. So, do you guys actually taste what was in the barrel before you guys purchased it, or not quite?
Not typically. A lot of times, what the boys are good enough that if Christian is buying it on like the open market, which is a thing that they have, market opens at like 4 a.m. European time. Wow. But if they're doing that, chances are they're probably buying a low volume out the gate, which is like a trial run. It's what we did with VDN barrels out of Spain, is that we bought like 2 of them and we saw how it was going to react with it, and we saw tremendous success. So then we doubled down and bought like 50, something like that, from the same.
That was a lot more than double.
Yeah, not the way to term it, but yeah. So that's kind of what we would do. But in the same aspect, the boys, Ted, Dana, Christian, Blake, Christian's fiance Mary, Blake's wife Anna, they all really enjoy. A lot of people like going to the Caribbean. A lot of people like going, California, which they do like doing. But they also really like trekking around Europe. That's they're from Germany. Their heritage is from Baden-Baden, Germany. So they went to Piemonte, Italy this last time, and we're tasting Barolo and looking at Barolo barrels. So that is an example of they were able to try the Barolo that was in the cask and then be able to purchase that cask to come back over to the States. So that doesn't happen as often because, it's not just as easy to pop over to Piemonte, Italy.
Yeah.
But,
Is that what you were doing?
That's what I was trying to do when I was out there. I was out there in Italy and Greece.
I saw you, man.
Yeah, I was asking him about
Greek sandals on. I was like,
trying to get that Santorini finish.
Looking like Jesus in the flesh.
That's awesome, man.
When you mentioned those VDN, by the way, that rye finished in VDN, that was delicious.
It's a heavy hitter.
Yes.
Was that a harsher pick too?
I don't know if it wasn't. I think you brought it to me.
Yeah, I don't
Here's
remember.
the thing about Harsha and Beverage King is it's easier to say what he hasn't done than what he has done. Has picked more things than really anybody else I probably can think.
Wow.
So
he's got a good track record though.
Yeah, that boy can pick well.
Absolutely.
You guys got any more honey finish on a horizon? You got a sailboat pick that you say it again?
Yeah, that's easy. We got plenty of them.
Oh yeah, I think Tony and me had that sailbox pick.
Yeah,
that honey finish was delicious. One of the best that we had.
20 barrels of honey barrels getting dropped off tomorrow.
Wow.
Say no more.
Wow.
Yeah, my boy's working. My boy's working overtime with them honeys. So,
We'd love to hear it.
Working the bees.
We will see you in October.
Say no more. Hit us up. You know how to reach us. You know how to find us.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the upgrades you guys have done? I think you guys were upgrading rick houses last year when we were there, and then maybe some of the new columns still. The new columns still came in at the end of last year too, right?
Yeah. So as far as upgrades that we've gotten, I'm trying to think from start to finish because we've moved so quickly. We've done a lot. So the biggest upgrades that we've done is in the distillery. We went from a 500-gallon cooker for our grains to 2,000. So we quadrupled that size.
Yeah.
Wow.
We went from a 1,000-gallon catch vat for our spent grain to a 9,000-gallon underground catch vat. And then we went from the 82-gallon pot still, 500-gallon pot still to a 40-foot split continuous column still. And to put that in perspective, because, I assume if people are listening to a steady pour, they probably know the difference between a continuous column and a pot still. But for us,
hopefully, you never know.
Yeah, you know,
right. He's explaining it to us.
Yeah, and guess what? If they don't,
they're going to learn.
They're going to learn. So, column stills for dummies. So, if you put a pot still, you have a pot still, you put mash in the pot, you heat it up, and you distill it, and you cut it from heads, hearts, and tails. Continuous column still, you have fermented mash that pumps into that still, and you are continuously pumping out at a certain proof. For us, it's usually like 144 proof, somewhere around there. It can fluctuate depending on what we're doing and how hot it is in the still house. But to put it in perspective for pot versus column, it will take to do 6,000 gallons of fermented mash, it would take Connor about 3 weeks to get that completely done on a pot still. If we did that 6,000 gallons of fermented mash on the continuous column still, depending how long he takes at lunch, anywhere between 8 to 10 hours.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So we are putting out about 11 gallons of at-proof distillate a minute off that still.
Wow.
And that is going to take these are projectionary numbers. We're not going to be working this horse as hard as these numbers are going to tell you out the gate. It's going to take quite a bit of time to get to this point. But if we were going to operate under those projections, we would go from about 1,000 barrels a year to about 10,000 barrels a year.
Wow.
Wow.
That's incredible.
So we have that. And then, as you mentioned, the Rick House, when we did our barrel tasting, we operated under Rick House 2, which was developed in 2017 and holds about 2,500 barrels at max capacity. On top of the hill, in 2019, we finished construction of Rickhouse 3 that holds 3,500 barrels. Behind 3, in 2021, we finished construction of Warehouse 4 that holds 6,500 barrels. And as of about 3 or 4 months ago, we finished construction of Rickhouse 5, which sits in front of Rickhouse 3, and that holds 8,000 barrels.
Wow.
Nice.
Yep.
That's awesome.
So we're already thinking Warehouse 6 is most likely going to be a copy and paste of Warehouse 5. So it'll basically be 2 2 8,000 barrel warehouses. And then I've heard chatter, which we always have chatter up there. We're always tossing out crazy ideas until compliance comes and drops the hand on us. But we're humoring potentially doing a actual rick house style. Instead of it being longer, it's going to be taller.
Okay.
And we're thinking it could be somewhere around 16 to 18,000 barrels.
Ooh,
All right.
interesting.
So that's going to take a little bit of time here. We got to fill up 5 and we got to fill up 6. So
That's a 5-year plan.
Right.
yeah.
Now is
At
that
least.
going to be the type that kind of like is quasi automated where it will self rotate the barrels, or is that going to be something where you're going to be like it gives you more variety in the single barrel program?
I would assume that it is going to be the variety in the single barrel program.
Okay.
Because as we are going and expanding more and more, what we're noticing is that we can't pass judgment on the column distillation yet, because all we've been able to try is, let's see, we launched that column still January 9th of this year. So if we produced a barrel on January 9th, which we weren't, we were all freaking out running around because there's still, you know what I'm saying, we're trying to figure out all the kinks. But if we were able to produce a barrel on January 9th, we would only have about 8 months in the barrel right now. So we're still, 3.5 years away from minimalistically tasting the final product of the column distillation.
Okay.
So we can't really pass judgment on it yet. But what we speculate is that you're going to have the fun, inconsistently consistent Starlight products that you're used to that comes off the pot still. The thing that's inconsistent is the variability of the flavor. The consistent part of it is going to be the quality. We know that is still going to be a factor that will never leave, but we also think that there's going to be a sideline of these continuous column distilled barrels that are going to be more of your like traditional whiskey.
Okay.
That consistency, the quality will be there, and also the consistency will be there.
Gotcha.
Because it's a lot easier to produce a more consistent. Excuse me, that rise by bang. It's easier to produce a consistently clean product on a column still than a pot still. So the thing that's going to be the major variance is going to be what barrels we use. So you're still going to have that fluctuation of flavor, just like you would at any distillery you go to. It depends on height level, heat, cold, integration. It's close to the walls, further away. All those things play a factor, but we think that the distillate itself is going to be a little bit more clean and a little bit more in line off column versus what we have as a pot.
Interesting.
Okay.
With that said, do you see yourself selecting a particular rick house for there to be like a specialty area where people were saying, "Oh, I got it out of Rick House 4."
Right.
Oh, I got it out of Rick House 2.
Right.
You're assuming that we don't already have that. So right now, and I'll tell you this, many people have tried, all have failed. They have all tried to get a barrel out of the southwestern corner of Rick House number 2. And do you all know the reason why nobody can get a bottle out of or barrel out of the southwestern corner of Rick House 2?
We don't.
Is that where the reserve is? I don't know.
Because those family reserves are drinking where they come from.
Yeah.
So, that is, in theory, actually not in theory, it's actually quite factual. That is the hottest element in the rick house, because when you look out that front door, you're 6.5 degrees off due north. You say, wow, 6.5 degrees, that's oddly specific. Yes, I know. Me and Ted went and measured it. I don't know why. But you're 6.5 degrees off due north. So that makes the southwestern corner of the rick house the hottest element there, because the sun rises in the east and then settles in the west. And that is just constant heat integration that's happening. It's almost like you're not getting a break from the heat when you're in a heat cycle, because it's cooking that much. And that's a good thing. And then it also can be a negative thing. So we actually moved the barrels from the southwestern side to the southeastern side, because there's a thing called the law of diminishing return, because eventually if you're capped in how good a barrel is getting, then you're just evaporating product. You're just losing product at that point. So you're not doing it any justice by still kind of, whooping it with the heat. So what we decided to do is give it a couple years on the opposing side to kind of slow that process down a little bit.
Got you.
Okay.
I have a question. In some of these rick houses you're talking about being, multiple stories high, are you still going to be able to climb up like you did? I just have a picture of you. If you go to Starlight and Andrew's there, he's going to be climbing around up on top of the barrels, thieving.
Brother, I will not stop climbing barrels until my knees give out. Until OSHA stops me,
I love
my
it.
knees give out.
No, that's perfect. That's
And
perfect.
I don't think OSHA's gonna stop.
It's just the picture I have of you at Starlight. It's just he's gonna be on top of some barrels.
I had a double pick today. I don't know how it is where you guys are at, but it was about 111 degrees in the rick house today.
Oh, wow.
And of course, this group wanted all the barrels that were 5 high, so the boy was sweating.
They were putting you to work.
Yes, sir.
Man, that was an experience in that rick house, man. You were going from barrel to barrel for us.
Yeah.
You want to try this? You want to try?
Still.
I know, man. You were moving, and I definitely appreciate
great
that.
time out there.
It was a
Absolutely.
wonderful time.
If I'm not sweating, we're not having a good time.
We were all sweating in that rick house, man. We
Yes,
enjoyed
sir.
it.
Yes, sir.
Now, Andrew, do you have a favorite release? You have your own favorite?
Yeah, I have a few. Some are closer. So, I'm a big fan of the family reserves. Obviously, you got to pay homage to those because those are what we put out as a distillery that says, guys, this is the year 2023, this is the year 2024, the year 2025, and this is what we think was the top of the line. This is what we think embodies our company, our family, our distillery. So you got to give the flowers to the family reserves, but in the same respect, that's almost a cop-out answer. Because, of course, why wouldn't I say that? But what I'll tell you is that a few different ones that I think were absolutely outstanding. I partner with the ALS Foundation,
Okay.
which is one of the charities that we operate with. Each one of us, it really wasn't by design, but each one of us that are kind of in a leadership role at the farm kind of just partner with the charity. Dana does breast cancer. I think Christian does Norton Children's Hospital. I do ALS. Ted does prostate. So we all just have these things, and we all do different things to generate money just doing bourbon. So as a matter of fact, I developed a ALS small batch from Starlight Distillery.
Okay. Nice.
2-barrel blend. It's 121.1 at 4.5 years old. That's one I'm really proud of. One I really like. A, it supports a great cause, but B, also at the end of the day, it's just good juice. There was 2 Spirit of Canton barrels that were both charred 2s. One had a charred head, one had a toasted head. And it just mashed very, very well together. So that was one that, if you take away the family reserves, I was a big fan of. But then also the Mizunara finished bourbon whiskey.
You gotta hear
that one. Yeah. So that one was a barrel that was so damn expensive to get over here.
Yeah.
They made us buy each barrel a plane ticket. That's how expensive it was. And I think all in, it was like $6,000, give or take a couple hundred. What's a couple hundred at that point?
Right.
And so that ended up, we were nervous at first because that is one of the highest, if not, I guess it would be the highest price pointed bottle that Starlight has released in a small batch form. And we were nervous about it because, when you jump price points, especially in today's market, it can be a hard sell. It really can. And especially if it's going out into distribution, we can't be everywhere in every liquor store and every restaurant and bar at all times explaining to people why this is why it is.
All right.
And so part of my role at the farm is to enter in competitions that, we see fit for the year. And there was not one competition that I entered. I think we entered 54 bottles in overall. We went 52 for 54 on awards. And of those awards, every single one, the smallest award that I got for the Mizunara was double gold. The highest one I got was double platinum.
Oh my gosh.
Multiple times.
Wow.
And so that is what slingshotted it because we knew it was good. The people that had tried it knew it was good, but the world didn't know it was good yet.
Right.
And so having that verification and that validity that came through on saying, this lives up to the hype. And also, if you really think about it, what other Mizunara is out on the market? You can think of a couple different other ones that are out there, and the price points that are associated with those are ludicrous.
Yeah.
Crazy.
500.
Yeah.
You gotta win the lottery.
He knows. He knows.
So really, for the price point that it's at, being a 7-year,
Yeah.
Mizunara cast finish, it actually is quite budgeted and well under, value if you want to look at it in today's market. So we were really proud of that. We were really proud of that barrel, and it was nervous. It was nerve-wracking. It was something that we had to step out of our traditional comfort zone of. We're very used to being in control of everything we do, being a family-owned business and a craft distillery. So to take a leap of faith out there and kind of play with the big boys and win definitely boosted a lot of confidence.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Nice.
Yeah, it's definitely delicious. I'm glad Drew picked the bottle up.
Yeah, that
Really.
that was one I left with when we came out that day.
Yeah.
When,
No doubt.
we came for the family reserve. And
Right.
we got the family reserve.
We got some other things
We
too.
also left with the Mizunara.
And the Spanish wine. Shout out to Tyler.
Because we
Louisville
tasted that
Bourbon Buzz.
Mizunara.
Yeah,
We tasted that Mizunara when we were out.
we did.
Yes.
In the Rick House. Yeah. Yep.
And I remember
for the
you saying,
distribution
I'm a
launch.
get.
You guys are doing a new experience too, right? The bottle your own.
Yes, sir. We just launched it. Good Lord. We operate in dog years up on the farm up there. So I can't tell if we've had it for 7 days or 7 weeks. It's brand new. We just launched it. Our tour guide manager, Ricky Urquhart, is the one that really oversees it. And it's something very special. There are barrels that go into that bottle your own program that you almost can't find anywhere else.
Wow.
And I selected those barrels to go in the bottle your own because they were a part of my barrel program, but I felt like they were so unique. It was almost a shame to box it into one area. I would rather share that with everybody.
Okay.
So I'd rather a lot of people leave with a little bottle than a little people leave with a lot of bottles. You know what I'm saying?
Was it close to the southwest corner?
I'm not telling you anything. But you're not far off.
Okay. So it's in that range, somewhere in that area.
Yep.
Wow, that's awesome though. Yeah, I mean, because that's a cool experience we've had at other distilleries. So that's kind of cool that people can come out to Starlight, still get the same experience, and do a bottle of your own. That's pretty dope.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what's up. Anything that people should be on the lookout for Starlight? Are you guys coming out with Family Reserve is every year?
Yeah, it's every year on Repeal Day. So Repeal Day falls on December 5th. So if you just look at the calendar, it can kind of tell you where December 5th falls, if it's going to be pre or post December 5th. Because, I mean, the odds of December 5th falling on the day that we need it to is, not high. But one thing that we do is we do a couple lead-up events to distillers to Repeal Day. So we do some high-end steak dinners that give you access to Distiller Club to Repeal Day bottles out the gate, so you can get them a few days early, guarantee you a bottle. Shout out to our culinary manager, Dana Brewer. She does a phenomenal job of making a curated menu for that. I basically provide the whiskey. She provides the eats and makes it all look pretty, so my job's easy. But we do a little bit of that. We'll do kind of a kickoff party for some groups the day before. So it's just kind of a party. Repeal Day kind of turned into Repeal Week for us just because, we like to have a good time. We like to showcase it to everybody. And we like to, if you're a rider and you love everything about Starlight and you make sure you have to get that bottle and you want to be a part of that, then we want to make sure that we're, giving the people the opportunity to get an early release to something as a thank you for being, such great supporters and taking us to that next point.
Nice.
So that is something always to look forward to. And then this juice I have in here.
Uh-oh.
That looks special.
That's
right?
something to look forward to next year. So
Okay.
that is going to be coming out. I won't speak too much into it. I will tell you two things. One is going to be decanter. Two is going to be 10 years old.
Okay.
10-year Starlight.
I feel like
Stop the recording.
We will have to have you back on.
Or just go visit you and taste it in person.
Either little or both.
Well, I'll tell you this right now, as a thank you for having me on. If you guys end up coming up in October, you remind me about that. I'll give you a little sneak peek.
Shut
Drew,
Nice.
change that plane ticket,
Shut
Drew.
your mouth.
Yes. Yes.
Shout out,
Tease
man.
us with a good time.
Yeah, this has been great, man. Thank you so
100%.
much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Certainly appreciate
Thank you so much for having me.
I know.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing your time.
Yeah. Well, more importantly, thank my wife. She did an overnight with my daughter somewhere. She was like, listen, if you're drinking a bunch of bourbon with a bunch of guys on a Zoom call, I'm going to go spend the night with some friends. And I was like, sweet, we got a bachelor.
Shout out to the wife.
Shout out.
Shout out. 100%.
Let's have fun sometime.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, we love to hear it.
Well, yeah, no. Again, thank you for coming on. Definitely stick around afterwards before we actually sign off. But thanks for coming on. We look forward to going out to Starlight. Definitely to our listeners, if you haven't been out to Starlight Distillery, definitely go check it out.
check 'em out.
It is a
Follow
great time.
Starlight. Follow
It
Andrew.
is an experience.
Yes.
Great
Yeah,
experience.
and it's the you could spend like the whole day out there.
Easily.
This isn't like a stop in your day. This is the whole day.
Make that a whole day.
Easily.
Yes.
And if you come
100%.
during fall, prepare for the war zone.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it.
You know, on Repeal, December 5th, on Repeal Day, are you going to have the Santa out there again? Because Santa was dope. That
First
Santa,
off, I couldn't kick Santa off that farm even if I tried. No, that Santa's been coming up there since before I was born.
Wow.
That man is a part of the farm, a part of the family. He will
was
be
awesome.
there in all of his joy. Probably having a couple pours, getting a little bit of that jolly juice.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I was telling the fellas, I was like, that had to probably be the best Santa I've ever.
He was amazing. We just threw something at him. We're like, you wanna throw some stuff on the mic, some whiskey bars? He was like, all right, let's do it. Quick. Like within like a minute, right, Drew? This is crazy. Yeah, it was awesome.
yeah, that's my guy.
So
Well, awesome. Well, definitely, again, listeners, check out Starlight Distillery.
Yep.
Andrew, stick around afterwards. But until then, we'll see you on the IG streets.
deuces.
Deuces.
Peace.
Cheers.
Love to y'all.
Well, that concludes this episode of a Steady Pour podcast. Make sure you follow on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
That was dope.
That was fantastic.
Man, that was awesome.